All right, Nick, let's talk about the Houston Texans. Houston has been interviewing a couple of OCs, one recently, a few over the past couple of days and weeks, showing that they need to get a new guy in here to run this offense. But I think if you look through all of these guys, there's a certain theme emerging here for the Texans of what they're looking for in their new offensive coordinator. Very interesting here for Texans fans. But before we get into that, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, the Texans recently interviewing Nick Caley, the Rams assistant, as an offensive coordinator coach, but they also had a couple other guys they have interviewed as well. There's a theme emerging here through these guys and what they're going to do. Let's get into the article and we'll talk more about it on the other side. This, of course, is from NBC Sports. It says Rams assistant Nick Caley will interview for the Texans offensive coordinator job Thursday, per Albert Breer of MMQB reports. Caley is the Rams pass game coordinator and tight ends coach. Caley joined the Rams for 2023 season after coaching tight ends for the Patriots for 6 seasons. He doubled as a fullback coach in New England from 2017 to 2021. The Texans have interviewed Bucs quarterback coach Thad Lewis, Syracuse offensive coordinator Jeff Nixon, and their own quarterback coach Gerard Johnson for the job. There's a very heavy quarterback theme here throughout these coaches. I'm curious what your thoughts are, Nick. I know you've got some insight on this one, but before we get to you, Texans fans, in the comment section below, I threw out a couple of names there. We got Lewis, got Johnson, you got, the latest guy out of Caley, Nixon. Are any of these guys that ring a bell for you? Are they screaming out for you as the next Texans OC? Let us know your thoughts on the latest interview candidates for the Texans, and if any of them you are favoring in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think is the trend amongst these Texans offensive coordinator candidates?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the list of who the Texans are bringing in, the strategy is pretty clear. They're looking for quarterback maximizers, guys that can unleash CJ Stroud and get the best out of him. And these are guys that are quarterback player focused, not coach focused. And Slowick to me was a little bit more coach focused. He wanted to be the smartest guy in the room. Nothing against him personally. I don't think it was sort of subconscious. I don't think it was a deliberate intention. I don't know, maybe it was, but it just felt that way. And sometimes you get some Kyle Shanahan era guys that have that kind of vibe. Kyle Shanahan has that kind of vibe. Great coach, one of the best in football, undeniably so, offensive mastermind. But sometimes he becomes less about maximizing his own players and more about maximizing his own scheme. If you look at where these coaches are coming from, their mindset, they're all about the player. You look at Gerard Johnson, of course, CJ Stroud's quarterback's coach with the Houston Texans would be all about CJ Stroud, the player. You look at Caley, the most recent hire, he comes from the Rams, where the Rams, Sean McVay, famously tailors and changes his system, did it completely for Matt Stafford, right? He's all about the player, putting the player in positions to be successful. You look at Jeff Nixon from Syracuse. He inherited Will McCord, a transfer from Ohio State. For those of you who aren't familiar, Will McCord left Ohio State in really bad terms. A lot of people thought he wasn't very good at football. He goes to Syracuse, literally leads the country in every passing statistic, focusing the offense to be 100% quarterback maximizing, giving his quarterback, Will McCord, an incredible opportunity to have a great season. And then finally, you look at Thad Lewis from the Buccaneers, unleash Baker Mayfield, quarterback in his own right, very similar kind of coach, very similar kind of guy in terms of being all about the player first, being about the quarterback, unleashing that quarterback's talent. I think that's what the Texans need to do. They obviously have the skilled players. They obviously need to address a few things on the offensive line. Defense is great, right? But we know who the Texans are in terms of how good they're going to be in terms of on paper. They're a good team. They basically went to the playoffs and won a playoff game despite having massive injuries at the skill position on offense, really wide receiver, to be totally honest, and a just defunct offensive coordinator by the end of it, and O-line issues. Need to fix the O-line issues. That's a talent thing. They'll have to address that this offseason, free agency, draft trades, however they go about it. But the reality is, I think bringing in a new OC just to unleash CJ Stroud, just to be a guy who's there to make CJ Stroud's life easier, will do wonders. So much of the Texans' offense was CJ Stroud has to do something magical on third down or make a big play where it's not there. Everyone remembers the snap that went over his head against the Chargers when it was 6-0 in that wild card game. Big play down the field, completely changed that game. That's been CJ Stroud all of 2024, and that can't be CJ Stroud going forward. I think any one of these guys would be a great hire. I think the strategy here is perfect for the Texans and D'Amico Ryans, getting the right guy in place, not focused on the coach, not focused on the system, but the player and CJ Stroud.
Yeah, Nick, and this doesn't isn't me and you coming out here and saying this is what the Texans are going to do. The Texans themselves actually said this, according to Mike Garofalo, talking to the executives in the front office for the Texans. They said, look for the offensive coordinator search to be about a pair with CJ Stroud in a way to make Stroud more comfortable. Again, per Mike Garofalo of NFL Network. And they again go on to talk about, this isn't surprising after reported butting of heads, the issues between Stroud and Slowick. Like you said, they really just didn't mesh very well. Slowick kind of seemed a little bit arrogant, a little bit more about him, less about Stroud. And Stroud did play very well. He had a slight dip in his numbers per PFF. I think it was about a 4-point dip, but overall, he still played pretty good. But I think if he had an offensive coordinator like one of these four guys who are talent maximizers, who are about the quarterback, who are not about themselves, about the scheme, I think we see CJ Stroud, like you said, I love the word unleashed. We get to see him come into his full potential and really show what this Texans offense can do. I think we got a taste of it his rookie season, but I think that was just because no one knew exactly what CJ Stroud was capable of. Now we have guys that come in, like you talked about, tailor the offense around CJ Stroud, maximize his talent. I think this is a perfect hire or move to hire a guy like this for the Texans. I'm excited to see who they choose and if that person is able to come and unleash CJ Stroud.
And look, just one final point to end on here. It's not always about the system. It's not always about the coach. It's about the player. And you know who believes that? It's not us. It's not the reporting. It's the greatest coach of all time, arguably, and Bill Belichick. Here's what he had to say. Players win games. You can't win games without good players. You got to have good players. And as a coach, you want to give your players a chance to win. You want to put them in a position, if they go out there and play well, they'll have a chance to win. Slowick was the opposite. I think his whole mindset was, I want to go out there and run the system and strategy I want to, and the players have to adapt to me. Looks like the Texans are changing their approach. They're going to make a great hire based on the candidates available to put the players, namely CJ Stroud, in the best position to win. Love this from the Texans. Great sign for them going forward.